What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the WiseTake NBA DFS Wise stream. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013, and I am joined once again by the GOAT, the true OG of the WiseTake Nation, Mr. Paulie D. You can find him on Twitter at Paulie with 8 Ds, and hopefully you are subscribed to WiseTake.com and you were able to check out Paulie D's Core Plays article. Thought it was an awesome article, man. I like how you changed the approach of how we do it. Gave people the player pool to pick from, also kind of ranked the players that you like in the order you like them, players that you plan to get the most exposure to, obviously, and you put it out early, which I think is awesome, especially on a site like this where there could be changes throughout the night, and we'll be updating the nation in the Slack chat as we get this information rolling. But it's a wild, exciting day. This is the first real slate of NBA. Yesterday just being a 2-game slate. Paulie, what's happening?
What up, baby? This is awesome. NBA back, Christmas style slate. And, there's so much that has changed with these teams because of coronavirus and injuries and whatnot that, people that aren't doing the research are going to fall way behind. Like, there's a lot of people you wouldn't think you want to play that are, like, really good plays on the slate.
Absolutely, man. I 100% agree, and I'm looking forward to kind of going in with you. I've got our projections pulled up on the screen. For those of you who are subscribed to WiseTake.com, you can actually download these for FanDuel and DraftKings. It's not what it looks like on the site. There's just a little visual we make for the show, but you can download the projections and upload them into whatever optimizer that you prefer to use to get a little WiseTake Nation flavor. And I'll be updating these projections as we go through. We'll go game by game, and I'll be updating as we go with the minutes and trying to get a good idea of where we want to attack. So excited to get into it. We're not going to waste any time because we have less than an hour to lock. Well, at least first lock. So let's go ahead and dive right in. First up, we've got the Orlando Magic and the Brooklyn Nets. No home teams. Keep in mind that they're all playing in a bubble. So we have a 210.5 total, down from 211.5. The Magic opened up -6. They're up to -6.5 currently. A lot of changes, on the Brooklyn side, especially. Paulie, I'm gonna give you the floor. Talk to me about I guess we'll start with team by team. We'll go Orlando first.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pulling up my page. We do have Orlando's lineup. DJ Augustine, Evan Fournier, James Ennis, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Vucevic. Wes Iwundu got ruled out. And the big kind of question mark is Jonathan Isaac. He's available to play. He only played I think 13 minutes in the last scrimmage. It was either 7 or 13 minutes, and he went off in those 7 or 13 minutes for 20 plus DraftKings points. Orlando's going to make the playoffs. They probably don't have a serious chance of going deep. I don't know where their motivations lie, if they're seriously going to try to compete, or if they're kind of, just playing out the string and, are going to kind of give young guys a shot and see what they're worth. Not really sure. So, Orlando's a big question mark, but as a whole, this is one of the slower games on the slate. And there's not a ton that I'm really interested in Orlando. Vucevic is one of the better centers on the slate, but he's expensive. Centers against Brooklyn has been a thing for a long time, so I understand if you want to take a shot there. But Brooklyn's going to be terrible. So if they get out to a big lead, do they, keep their guys out there? Do they give Mo Bamba some run? Does Jonathan Isaac cut into the usage if he gets enough minutes? A lot of question marks here that I couldn't really decipher from, taking a look at some of their scrimmage usage and whatnot. So I'm not really that into much of Orlando. I'm all right with taking a shot on Vooch. I'm cool with a little bit of Evan Fournier and Tyson Ross, but that's about as far as I'm going to go. They're kind of cramped at a couple spots. You got DJ Augustine. Who's notably not in the starting lineup is what's his name? The guy that 76ers took in the first pick of the draft.
Markelle Fultz, and they've already said that if he plays, he's going to be on a minutes restriction. So that's the reason he's not starting.
Right.
I mean, I'm expecting for them to say that, they must feel like he's playing. But similar to who you just met, who the fuck did you just say is also on a minutes restriction? Isaac.
Isaac, yeah. And they also have Michael Carter Williams. So it's none of those guys are appealing to me. I feel like they're all going to kind of steal from each other. So a little bit of Vooch, a little Fournier, a little Ross, but they're like my least interesting team on the slate.
Man, I completely agree. I think that ownership wise, not that I think they'll be chalk, but I think they'll be inflated because people, there's a lot of people like that have work and shit and just want to make a team and sweat it and not have time to, worry about sweating news or anything like that. And it's the first game we got. People are excited. We haven't had NBA. Yesterday was a 2-game slate and there was a ton of overlays. So that gives me the impression that a lot of DFS players just didn't like the 2-game slate. I don't blame them.
Yeah.
But this is it. This is the first real one. So I'm expecting people to be gung-ho. I expect the tournaments to, I haven't even looked, but I expect contests to be filling all kinds of shit. And I expect this game to get some ownership. Now, we'll talk about the Nets. I have more interest in them. I think you'll have also a little bit more interest in the Nets than we do the Magic. But I'm with you, man. There's not a ton of the Magic I want. We got guys that are playing. It's not like we have a ton of guys out. We have guys that are playing just with minute restrictions, and that just fucks everything up. Because now instead of just load up on DJ Augustine because Fultz is out, we now have to play this game. We know Fultz is the original starter, but they're going to ease him in. What does that mean for Augustine? So there's a lot of question marks. This is a slate where you have a lot of games, and I'm with you. I'm not trying to force anything in, particularly from this team. I don't mind taking shots on Vooch, like you said. Centers against Brooklyn. Plus, DeAndre Jordan opted out, so that was not that he was a good defender, but he was certainly a better defender than Jared Allen. So I'm with you 100%, man. I'm cool with Vooch. I'm okay if you want to take a shot on a guy like Ross in tournaments just because he takes a lot of shots. If you want to roll with Fournier, a guy that typically gets a lot of minutes, I'm okay. I'm not going to talk anybody off. But I personally am not going out of my way to roster anybody from Orlando. With that said, let's flip it right over to Brooklyn. Talk to me about the Brooklyn Nets, man. We know here we got some news, right? No DeAndre Jordan, no Spencer Dinwiddie. We know Kyrie's done. Kevin Durant's not going to play at all this year. Talk to me about the dirty Brooklyn side.
Yeah, so there's definitely there's like 3 teams that I don't think have a ton to play for. Brooklyn is gonna make the playoffs, but with none of those guys playing and the injuries, I don't expect them to be very competitive, and I think they're gonna play some of these unknown guys. They picked up Tyler Johnson, who should get some minutes, who's very cheap, but Karis LeVert may have the highest usage rate of anyone on the slate today. I mean, in the scrimmage games, he was everything for this team. Assists, ton of scoring, ton of shot attempts. He can get a lot of steals. Peripherals, like he's priced fairly, I would say, on both sites, but there's upside. Like right before the break, he went for 60 in like 2 out of his last 3 games. He was just doing everything, and there's less people here now. Jared Allen also was a guy that was kind of sharing the load with DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Jordan's gone. He's probably going to get 30, 32 minutes. And, Vucevic, not really a great defender. He should get most of the Brooklyn rebounds at 5'8". He's a interesting play. Not, if he was 1,000 cheaper, he'd be really, really appealing. But at 5'8", he still has to have a pretty good game. I'm gonna have a couple shares of him, but it's some of these cheaper guys that are, the GPP winning kind of plays with like Rodion Kurocs. This was a first round draft pick of Brooklyn last year. He's shown some flashes of, being a guy we want to play in fantasy. He takes a bunch of threes. He's like a stretch 4, Dirk Nowitzki type player. I think he's going to see around 23 minutes. I was hoping to get the Brooklyn lineup because he's projected to start, and if that's the case, you might even be able to up that projection to like 28 minutes. And at 3-2 on DraftKings, and I believe min price on FanDuel, he does have quite a bit of upside, like 10x upside, just because there's not many other bodies they got that are going to play. Chris Chiozza also projected to start. Not a high usage guy, but should be on the court for about 30 minutes. When he's like the only option to score in summer league games, whatnot, he has had 30, 40-point DraftKings kind of performances. Obviously, there's LeVert in the way, a couple other guys, Allen, Kurocs, but he's worth a punt, especially if they get blown out. He could, have like 10, 12 DraftKings points by the third, then play the whole fourth and finish with around 30 and get you something close to 10x. There's guys I like more on the slate than him, but just worth mentioning. I guess the same could be said for Tyler Johnson. I'll take the guy that's starting, and really, there's just better plays throughout the slate. There's a couple other Nets that you could take a stab at. Dazan Musa is another similar to what I said about Kurocs. I have less interest in him. You have TLC, who's going to probably see around 25, 30 minutes. He's 3,500 on DraftKings. You know, we know, I doubt we're ever going to get like a 30 or more out of him, but there's just not many guys to do anything. If like LeVert were to get in foul trouble or they get blown out and they pull him, because they've been extremely cautious with LeVert his entire career, one of these guys is going to pick up the slack. Garrett Temple, Justin Anderson, Joe Harris. But right now, for me, it's LeVert, Kuroix are top elite plays, and then Jared Allen and Chioza I've got a little bit of interest in.
Yeah, it's funny. It seems like site specific. A lot of these players are like almost site specific. On DraftKings, a lot of the Brooklyn guys seem underpriced for the usage. Like Karis LeVert, like Paulie said, I believe is 7-8 over there. A site where you could potentially get some extra points for 3-pointers. A site where you can get a double-double or triple-double bonus. And LeVert projects really well for us on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he doesn't project as well, and it's a little bit more of a competitive situation. I got to fix the positions on the sheet for those of you that are looking. I realize it says those are the DraftKings positions. But anyway, the pricing is correct. So LeVert's a little bit more expensive over there. Jared Allen's another example. 5.8 on DraftKings seems fairly reasonable, despite the fact that we have a lot of bigs to look at. On FanDuel, he's 6.7. Not to say you can't play him, but you are paying a little bit more of a premium. Chris Chioza, 3,900 on FanDuel. Seems like kind of a no-brainer at that point. 3,900 on DraftKings. 5,600 on FanDuel. Again, that'll make you think a little bit. Now you're getting, I think Ja Morant is like 6,300, so he's not that far off. So it's definitely a site-specific kind of thing. I think that means you'll get lower ownership on some of these Brooklyn players on FanDuel. But obviously, they're easier to fit in and make a priority on DraftKings. I'm with you, Paulie. Jared Allen seems like an awesome play, but LeVert seems like one of the top plays on the slate. The only thing holding us back, the only negative here is this game is projected to have a lower total, projected to have a lower pace. But LeVert seems like a slam dunk on DraftKings, especially. Kuroix for value for sure, especially on DraftKings again at 3,300. And Chioza, man, like you said, I mean, he's going to have to play a lot of point guard. We know Crawford's here, but he's not playing. Tyler Johnson, Chioza was at least here, right? Like, I mean, a little bit, right? I don't know. I just feel like I would rather go with him as well. So there's options here on Brooklyn. This is a one-sided game for me. I definitely want more Brooklyn pieces than I am worried about the Orlando side. With that said, let's move it on over to the Memphis Grizzlies and the Portland Trailblazers. We have a 224.5 total. That's 14 points higher than we have for this Nets game. Portland opened up -1.5. They're up to -3. We do know what's his name is back. Nurkzilla, whatever you want to call him. And Zach Collins. So they got a lot bigger. They lost Ariza. I don't think anybody gives a damn. We'll start with the Memphis side. Paulie, holla at your boy.
Yeah, so, there's a lot riding on this game. Portland is trying to catch Memphis for that final seed into the playoffs. Should be pretty fast-paced. And Portland's going to be different now with all this size. Zach Collins, Nurkic, Whiteside. Like, I'm curious to see what the starting lineup is. In the scrimmages, they went with Nurkic and Whiteside in the starting lineup, and Collins went to the bench. Collins did start last year in the playoffs, was meant to start this year. Then all the injuries happened. They got Whiteside, and Collins himself got hurt. But, regardless, I think Memphis is going to have to do it from the outside. So, like, John Morant, Dylan Brooks, Kyle Anderson to some extent, I'm kind of interested in. Jaren Jackson, Joval, and what's his name? The other big, I'm losing my thought. What's his name?
Brandon Clark.
Brandon Clark. Those three guys, they're going to need to be out there. So they're guys you want to have some exposure to. But I just think that they're overmatched. And, I find it hard to see them really going off. Like, Jaren Jackson, I guess, has the highest ceiling because of his price, and he shoots the most threes of that group. Joval has the highest raw total out projection, but at his price, it kind of balances itself out. Of the bigs, Jaren Jackson's probably the guy I'm most interested in. I wanted to be more interested in this game, but I just don't know. I don't know. I think it's going to be slightly slower than the total projects. It's like a playoff game. Every position matters. They're not going to be as free up and down with the ball. I think Portland's going to slow down kind of significantly from what they were during the regular season now that they got all this size. So John Morant is too cheap on both sites. I'm cool with him. Dylan Brooks, Kyle Anderson, Jaren Jackson, they're all really cheap, so they're worth a flyer. And Joval, I think if you're game stacking, he's fine. I don't think he goes way, way off. I think there's risk of him getting in foul trouble, and he really still hasn't gotten a ton of minutes. So it's Ja, and then like no more than 20% on anyone else from Memphis for me. Ja, I do like quite a bit on both sides. You're muted.
I agree with John Morant. He's extremely cheap on both sides for the upside that he brings. Jaren Jackson projects through the roof for us, but you know the deal. We have him projected for 30 minutes because that's an ideal situation. Jaren Jackson has not played an NBA game in months. Even when he had a habit of getting in foul trouble. So he's a player that if you're running an optimizer or whatever, if you don't cap his projection, and we try not to mess with the projection too much. If you don't cap his projection, it's going to give you a shit ton of him. So we highly recommend you cap him at whatever number you're comfortable with. And I like to set groups for the bigs on Memphis, not to play more than one of Jaren Jackson, Brandon Clark, or Jonas Valanciunas, because they do intertwine, that they do take away from each other, take away boards from each other, take away minutes more importantly. So it's a good situation, but keep in mind, Jaren Jackson, the DVP, everything, that's for Melo playing the four, not for a guy like Zach Collins. Not that Collins is some world beater, but he is a big guy, and he is going to take some boards away.
No, he's excellent defender.
Excellent defender. There you go. Excellent defender. But even aside from that, I'm more worried about the rebounding aspect, because that's something like, if Jaren Jackson has a bad day, he can make it up for you on the boards at times. Not if he's getting in foul trouble, especially covering a guy that's big like Zach Collins. And young, right? Melo's not really going to do much. He's going to sit there and post you up, shoot fadeaways. A little bit of a different situation with Collins. He's a little bit, he could do more. He's younger, hasn't played in a while, looking to prove that he wants to be here. So there are some concerns. I do like I like one of these guys, but really, Joval to me is a little too expensive, and he's going to be matched up with big guys. We got Whiteside, we've got freaking Nurk. It's really, I want the four here if I want anyone, and it's between Jaren Jackson and Brandon Clark, and I'm concerned about foul trouble. So one or the other, but not too much of either, if that makes sense.
Yeah, agreed.
Other than that, I'm with you, man. It's really just John Morant. I think there's plenty of guys like Melton, all these guys you could take shots on, but with the value that we have, I would just rather go elsewhere and pay less, and and there's definitely other studs that we'll get to that I'm sure we're going to want to fit in. So let's move it over to the Portland side, Paulie. Any more interest on this side of the game?
A little, but everyone knows I love Damian Lillard. He's got a really nice price, but I'm really not that interested in it. Like, I think this is a very balanced group. Like, the guys who end up being the starters and the one or two guys off the bench, that's sevens. We're gonna, that's pretty much who's gonna play, who's gonna see the court. They're gonna dominate the minutes, but I just feel like they're all going to kind of take away from each other, and like here and there, one guy will go off for a random good game, but I think they're going to be very balanced. Nurkic at 5'9", going to be like unowned and probably worth a little bit of attention. Especially if they don't start Whiteside. Like if it's Nurkic starts and Whiteside comes off the bench or vice versa, as long as Nurk's going to be out there on his own as like the sole big man, then he should get the rebounds while he's out there, and he's got a good offensive game. He can shoot threes. He can shoot from 18 feet out, and at 5'9", like a double certainly in the cards, and he can get to like 40, and really pay off his price tag. Carmelo's fine, not that much interest. CJ McCollum seems expensive, and Dame, he's priced about right, in my opinion. Like, I don't think he goes for that 60-70 like he was during that crazy run earlier in the year, because that's when everyone was out. Now, sorry about that. They're not going to need him, to do all that, and unless there's, except for certain games or if it goes to overtime. So the guy I'm most interested in is Zach Collins. He's min price on DraftKings. He's about 4K on FanDuel, so less interest there, but you do get the extra point for the blocks. He's capable of getting you 3, 4, 5 blocks in a game. But min price on DraftKings is the home run. And I'm seeing some sites projecting him as the starter, some sites projecting Hassan as the starter. Like I said, the last scrimmage, they went with Nurkic and Hassan. Collins came off the bench, but he still played about, I think, 13 minutes and, performed well in those 13 minutes. He's a big point per minute guy. And I think if they start him, you could project him for closer to like 24 minutes at like 1.2 point per minute. It's almost a 30 at 3K, 10x, and he's got 12, 13x upside. He's a guy I'm probably going to get 25% of if he's not starting, and like 40 to 50% of if he is. And he's really the only guy I've got a lot of interest in on Portland.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Despite the fact that this game has a fair total, it's Portland has. While we miss Ariza, we get back a couple key players. Collins looked really good to start the season, right? Like Melo wouldn't even be here if Ariza didn't get hurt. Melo be coming off the bench, splitting time with Ariza. So we got him back. We've got Nurk back. That's going to affect Whiteside deeply, and we don't know how much. But both of these players, I mean, Nurk on DraftKings in tournaments, if you want to take a shot at 5'9", is fine. But even that, I don't know. I don't know how much he's going to play. Joe Val is not the greatest defender, but he's a big guy. He's going to make things difficult down low. You're going to have no easy gibbies for rebounds and all that kind of stuff. So I'm with you, man. On top of that, how is Nurkic being back going to affect Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum, even Carmelo Anthony? Where does he fit in all this? So there's a lot of question marks. Memphis, we know, did play fast before we had the break. I think Dame, like you said, would be my favorite. If I'm going to pick somebody that I like the most, it would be Dame, and that's mainly because we know point guards against Memphis have been a thing. And Dame's price is down from where he was at earlier this season, but you have to take into account that his role is also probably going to be slightly down from where it was earlier in the season, where everybody was hurt and he was out there just doing everything himself. So
and he's back from injury.
Yeah.
Like, he was out most recently too, so like he could have some rust as well.
Absolutely. So I'm with you, man. Like, as much as we love Dame Lillard as a company, as the WiseTake Nation, big Dame fans, Dame Dollar all day. I have some concerns. I'm a little hesitant to fire up. And just bottom line is we have other teams on this slate that either have guys missing or have cheap guys that come in to replace those people. We have a lot of moving parts, and I'd rather wait until we get to some of those better ones. Real quick, if you haven't hit that like button, guys, please hit that like button. Really helps us out, allows us to continue to do that dirty on that YouTube and that Twitch. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Welcome. Make sure you hit notifications bell so you're notified whenever we go live. We do streams Monday through Friday covering NBA, MLB. We do PGA, all kinds of stuff. So make sure you don't miss out. See a couple of the guys in the YouTube chat real quick. Give some shout outs to Jeffrey Dates with the Lemons. That's from some KBO shit right there. Armando Vasquez says, yo, what up? Diego Rodriguez, yo boys, what's good? Glad you guys are back. Glad to be back. Glad to have you in with us. Offensive username. Clever username. Thanks, boys. You got it. And shout out to Moochie. Moochie says, shout out to WiseTake. I took down the Millie slate, tied for first, winning 3,500. FanDuel slate last night.
Oh, shit. Nice.
Highlight.
Nice. Millie make it win.
There you go. Holla at your boy. Shout out to you, Mookie. Hey, listen, people like Mookie, man. He's been in the and I hope I'm saying your name right. If I'm not, please correct me, because you're in the NBA shows, you're in the MLB shows, and if you're just allowing me to butcher your name, there's no reason for that.
How's it spelled?
Mucci. It's either Moochie or Mookie.
Moochie.
Moochie mob ties. Holla.
Yeah,
shout out to you, man. He's been grinding. He's been in the NBA streams every day. The MLB streams every day. He was in the NBA. He's here now for NBA. Hey, you got to put in that work, man. None in life is free. You got to work for it. Let's go. Giggity. Joe asked about Mikal Bridges. When we get to that game, Joe, we got you. We will take care of it. In the meantime, Paulie, we're going to move on to the next game, which I need to fucking...
Mikal Bridges team.
It is, right? Holla. Look at that. Timing's impeccable. The Phoenix Suns, who me and Paulie, when we talked a couple months ago, thought for sure the Phoenix did not make the cut. And then we found out like 2 weeks ago that they did. Going up against the Washington Wizards, who are going to look totally... I mean, yes, the Suns are going to look a little different too, but the Washington is going to look totally different. But we'll start with Phoenix. I'll slow my roll. Paulie, do you talk to me about the Phoenix Suns?
So the big thing is no Kelly Oubre. And then Dario Saric is the question mark for this game. If, he gets ruled in, that could adjust certain things. It's a tough spot, Phoenix. Like, you love targeting Washington, right? This is new look Washington, but they should just be a worse version of what they were and more attractive to target. So I want to like something on Phoenix here. I don't know what it is. Rubio, Booker, DeAndre Ayton, like Mikal Bridges, Saric, if he plays, if Saric's out, maybe that could open up somebody like Frank Kaminsky, who's extreme, like the 100 off the minimum on DraftKings. Cameron Johnson, who is a little pricey on DraftKings at 4.3. I would need Sark to definitely be out before thinking about playing him. Aaron Baines, I think he had coronavirus and he's now just getting back from it or some injury that he really didn't get to play in the scrimmages, but he is going to be active today. Couple question marks, but Booker feels too expensive to me. Rubio, kind of similar. I don't think there's a ton of upside. Ayton, I'm concerned about how many minutes he plays and wish he was a tad cheaper, but I'm going to force myself into playing some of them, right? I guess Ayton and Rubio are going to be the de facto guys that win out because at 8.8, I'm just not thrilled about spending that on Booker, who seems to kind of just, I don't know, from what I saw from him in the scrimmage, it was almost like he was deferring. He was getting his assists and getting up some shots, but there was other guys who took more shots than him in each scrimmage. At 8.8, that's too close to the real studs on the slate. And if I'm gonna go up there, I'm just gonna find the money to get all the way up to the stud. So I'll have some Ayton, I'll have some Rubio. If Sarik's out, Frank Kaminsky becomes an elite play in my mind at 3.1, but we got to wait on that news. Mikal Bridges is 5.6 on DK. It's just, a little pricey. Yeah, he's probably going to play about 35 minutes, but I don't see a ton of edge here. I think it's similar to Portland where it's going to be mostly balanced and they're priced appropriately. So I don't see much here that I like outside of if Kaminsky opens up due to Sark being ruled out. And Rubio, Booker, Ayton are fine. I think they work well. Two of the three in a game stack with a bunch of Washington coming back because we'll touch on them. They are extremely attractive. But there's not a ton that I like here. You're muted.
I agree for the most part, especially if you look at the total of this game, which I forgot to mention is 224. If this was before the injuries, before COVID, this total would have been 230 something easy. And the fact that it's so low, it shows you the significance of some of the guys that are out. Mainly a guy like Bradley Beal from the other side. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Washington slow the pace. Phoenix was already kind of slow paced. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington slowed their pace just a little bit with no Beal as they figured things out. And in general, it just doesn't have the same appeal. It's got some appeal. Not the same appeal as it would have had before this COVID break. So I agree with you with Devin Booker. It's also a position thing. Not only does he seem expensive, but we got Chris Middleton with no Bledsoe. We've got Karis LeVert, who we just talked about, with no Dinwiddie or Kyrie. So there's other guys that are cheaper and seem to be in slightly better spots in my opinion. So I'm with you. I'm not, if I land on some Booker, I'm okay with it, but I'm not going crazy forcing him in. I think my two favorite Suns are going to be Ayton and Rubio, and probably Ayton more so than Rubio just because of how bad Washington has been against bigs for years. I'm okay with Rubio more so on FanDuel at 6,500. At 74 on DraftKings, I agree with Paulie. I'm fine with it for tournaments, but it's not somebody that I want major exposure to because he needs to really have an efficient game. It's not just about go out there and do a Rubio thing. At 6.5 on FanDuel, you can argue go out there and do a Rubio thing, and you should be okay. At 7.4, you need a little bit more than that. So I'm okay with them. I think he's going to see Ish Smith and Shabazz for the most part. Facilitating with Ayton, I like the combo of pairing Ayton and Rubio. We know Rubio's a big assist guy. But I'm not overly excited about too many other Suns. And I agree with you, Paulie, that Kaminsky would become an elite value play if Saric were to get ruled out. We're not going to have that information most likely. Mikal Bridges, I'm okay with in tournaments. I expect the numbers didn't really show a ton as far as usage with Mikal Bridges when Oubre's off the court, but I would expect Bridges to benefit at least some, take some extra shots. But again, he's a guy that doesn't do a ton of peripherals, so you're just relying on efficient shooting. And say he takes 20 shots, that's fine. But if he has a bad shooting day, he's gonna leave you with your dick in your hands. That's all. But I'm okay with it. I'm okay with grabbing some. But it's really Rubio, Ayton are my favorites. And again, I'm not crazy trying to force them in there. We have other spots that I think are interesting. But Rubio on FanDuel, to be clear. 6,500, that is way too cheap, I think, for Rubio with no Kelly Oubre. On the Washington side, Paulie, this one's going to look a little bit different. What do you think?
Yeah, so this is one of the most attractive teams on the slate. Losing Brad Beal, who I think was leading the NBA in usage over the last, say, month of the season. Also losing Bertans, who was, top 3 or 4 in shot attempts, out there doing rebounds, blocking shots, just a ton of usage to go around. And it's all these run and gun good for fantasy type players that they got filling the role. You got Troy Brown, who's my favorite play on pretty much the slate. Probably my second favorite play on the whole slate. Did great in the scrimmages. The coach said that he's expecting a real big second half of the season out of him. That he's really improved and kind of taken that next step. And you saw that in his usage in the last two scrimmages, where he might not have taken the most shots, but the most points, rebounds combined, consistency throughout all three of the games that they played. And there's not many guys at his position for him to have to really defer to. Shabazz, if he was cheaper, I'd be a lot more interested in, but they're kind of a little bit log jammed at guard, similar to Orlando. You got Shabazz, you got Jerome Robinson, who's there now, you got Ish Smith, who's there now, and we're not exactly sure. And they also have Jerian Grant, played 25 minutes in the last scrimmage. I would think that he's the odd man out going into the game today, but we really don't know how those minutes are going to be split up. Washington, I can't imagine that they're really going to try to make the playoffs and, really care about these games. It's more about probably getting these young kids experience. So, Troy Brown's a guy that they have plans for their future. Shabazz Napier is a rental. Ish Smith is a rental. So I just think he's going to get more of the looks, more of the usage. And then with the bigs, Thomas Bryant, they were babying him as he returned from injury this year, and his price really hasn't, increased yet, but he's going to be a 7K player very quickly. And without Beal, his usage should be higher. He should be, in line for a double-double, with Phoenix being bad against bigs. Rui Hatch, almost the same exact sentence, except he is 7-4 on DraftKings and a little bit cheaper on FanDuel, but just significantly higher. But a guy that you can play, I would play one or the other, not both together. And Mo Wagner is the third big that you can kind of consider in that group. I probably wouldn't play any of them together. I'd play them all individually, with Bryant being my favorite. Rui, probably I would have 60% Bryant, 25% Rui, and 15% Mo Wagner if I had to break that down. And Troy Brown, the same thing, 60% with 30% ish and 15 to 20% Napier. And then Jerome Robinson, I think, is worth a look, as well as Isaac Bonga at 3-3. This guy, Isaac Bonga, is a guy that, we said does nothing on the court, but I think he's finally developed a little bit. From what I saw in the scrimmages, finally he's going to get the chance to do it. If there's a better player in front of him like Brad Beal, he'll just stand there and do nothing. But because they're going to need him to, he's so cheap, and he's going to play about 30 minutes. He's going to take 10 shots, and he can do a lot of the peripherals. I think I'm going to take a shot on this kid, Bonga, 20-25%, just because you can get really nice stars and scrubs lineups with the guys at that cheap price. You put him and Collins from Portland into a lineup, and you can get Harden and Luka and Russ into the one lineup, and that's what's going to win the slate today. Stars and scrubs lineup with these guys that people just think are terrible, that are actually now in much bigger roles. So give me a little bit of Isaac Bonga too, but Troy Brown Jr. and Thomas Bryant, two of the top 5 plays on the whole slate.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. The Bradley Beal being out is fucking huge, and like you said, man, if he didn't lead the league by the time he went out, he was definitely in the top 3, no doubt, in usage on the season in general. So him being gone is huge. I agree with you with the guard situation. It's kind of a logjam, and I don't think they have the guard of their future necessarily. So I think they're just going to kind of rotate and see who fits in well with some of their young players. Troy Brown is the future for them. He's one of their guys that they're kind of relying on to help build their team around alongside Beal and these other players, and he's going to get an opportunity to really shine. And like you said, there's really no pressure from Washington because they're just playing to get their guys experience. I don't think, like you said, they expect to make the playoffs. I don't think they expect to go out there and have these young guys that are inexperienced carry them to the promised land. But think about how many shots you're missing from Bradley Beal and Davis Bertans alone. That's a lot of shots just from those two guys you're missing. I think Mo Wagner will get some opportunities to play a little bit more, but I agree with you. I think Thomas Bryant, Ayton or no Ayton, Phoenix has been terrible against centers. Thomas Bryant, Troy Brown, Those are my two favorite plays from Washington as well. Those are the two guys that I expect to kind of do that dirty, if you will. If you have 150 teams and you want to work in some Shabazz or Ish or play that game with the guards, be my guest. I don't hate the idea of Bonga either. Like you said, he's dirt cheap. And his role, everybody's role is going to be a little bit bigger. Everybody's going to benefit from Bradley Beal being out. It's just a matter of who's going to get the minutes. And I think Bonga is a candidate to get minutes because he already was getting minutes. Quick shout out to Roddy Pope, our boy, longtime WiseTake Nation member Roddy Pope, says today is Thomas Bryant's birthday. I'll let your boy with his seam in the streets.
Birthday narrative.
Birthday narrative all day. Mob ties will get to Jabari Parker when we get to the Kings game. Is there anything else from the Washington side from you, Paulie?
No, that's it.
All right, we're going to keep it moving then, big pimping. Next game we've got is the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks. Let me put them up right quick. We've got a 220 total that's up from 215.5. The Bucks opened up -4.5. It is still currently at -4.5. We're going to talk about the Boston side first. Paulie, take it away.
Yeah, so Boston is a team I'm having a tough time getting a read on. Kemba didn't really play a ton in the scrimmages leading up. Tatum and Jaylen Brown really dominated for the Celtics, but they really didn't care about the scrimmages. You could just tell. Tatum's really expensive on both sides. I think I get like 15% of him, but he's like in that same Devin Booker, Dame Lillard kind of conversation for me where they're like nice to haves. But if I'm there, there's either like one or two guys in that price range that I really like, or I'm finding my way up to the Hardens and Lukas and Giannis's of the slate. Jaylen Brown at 6'9", I could get a little bit of exposure to, maybe 20%. Gordon Hayward at 6'8", probably a little bit less, like 15. Marcus Smart, even less, like 10%. Kemba, 10, 15. He's a guy that I think is underpriced, but I feel like they're going to ease him in. I don't even know if Boston's going to care to even win or play these next few games. Like, there is no home court advantage, so if they're the 2 seed or the 4 seed, is it really going to matter? And I think they're more worried about getting to the playoffs healthy and playing well. So it'll be interesting, right? The main guy that I'm debating in my head from Boston is Enes Kanter. He's min price. Milwaukee, is traditionally beaten badly by bigs. Daniel Tice is in front of him, and it really seemed like they did not like Kanter. But looking around at different projections, I've seen people project him for as low as 14 minutes, and I've seen as high as 20. And if Kanter gets 20 minutes against Milwaukee, he's probably going to put up 25 DraftKings points or maybe more. So it's a risk. I wouldn't go more than 20% of him, and probably don't even end up with more than 10%. But he's got massive upside if he does get the minutes. If they do get blown out, which is possible, and he plays the whole fourth, or if Daniel Tice gets injured or in foul trouble, they don't really have much behind him. The other big is not going to play, so he's really interesting at 3K. We know what God mode Kanter is capable of if he's going to get the minutes. And then Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, I think are all right, but Boston after Orlando is the team I have the least interest in.
Yeah, I agree with you. With Boston, they're just of all the teams that have a lot going on and a lot of changes, Boston just didn't really have a ton. Right, there's not that much that's very different. Their pricing is kind of mediocre, right? Tatum, like you said, is crazy expensive. Kemba Walker's pretty cheap, but he has a limited projection, a minute projection. I think he's going to be on some sort of limitation. So I guess you could argue that's a boost for guys like Brown or Tatum. I do like Jaylen Brown on FanDuel, where he's 5,800 at small forward. That could come in handy if you kind of need a middle of the road guy. But we just talked about a guy like Troy Brown, who I do like better. So I'm with you. There's just really not a ton I like. On DraftKings, Kanter is interesting, but like you said, we're just really unsure, and he didn't really seem to have a defined role for this team. He could do the dirty even in 15 minutes, but you don't even know if he's going to get 15 minutes. That's the problem. So he's a guy you work in there at tournament for tournament exposure. I don't know, 10, 15%, just to have some, just in case. Because I agree with Paulie. I think it's going to be some of these value pieces mixed in with some of the stars out there. Couple balanced players in really key spots that are going to take it to the top today. So I completely agree. But now I'm not going to spend any time harping on Boston because I agree with you, man. That's just not much I like. Jaylen Brown on FanDuel is about it. With that said, let's go over to the Milwaukee side. We know that Chris Middleton is out. Talk to me about. I'm sorry, not Chris Middleton. My bad. I meant Eric Bledsoe. Eric Bledsoe is out. Talk to me about the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, so whenever one of Bledsoe, Middleton, and Giannis are out, the other two's usage becomes elite. So really like Giannis at 10.5. That's probably too cheap of a price tag for him. And you think he played like 20 minutes the other day and went for like 30 points and all his other peripherals as well. He's likely going to be the league MVP, unstoppable force, and Boston just has no size and no one to really compete. He's got great history against Boston, so he's one of the best plays raw point wise on the slate. Probably going to have about 30-40% of him. And then the rest of this team is, I shouldn't say that. Chris Middleton is all right, but at 7.5, I don't think he's got a ton of upside. If he gets you a 40, it's all right. That's not like, life changing. You really need him. He's the guy you go to when Giannis is out. When Middleton's out, I don't know if it gives him enough boost at 7.5. If he was cheaper or it was a better opponent, maybe I'd be more into him. But George Hill at 3.8, probably going to start for Bledsoe. We're definitely not going to have that lineup, but I'll hit refresh for the hell of it. Oh, we did get Brooklyn's lineup, and Lance Thomas is starting, not Kuroix. So we'll come back to that. But Dante DiVincenzo is also projected to start at point guard, so we'll see. But none of them really interest me. Brook Lopez at 4.8 seemed to be like in a groove in those scrimmages. He took like 10 threes in one of them and like was rebounding. He was like third in block shots in the regular season, so he's got that upside. Boston always gets killed by bigs. I've got a little bit of interest in him at 4.8. And then Ersan Ilyasova had a couple big games in the scrimmages too, and he's the guy that like they have on the roster for the playoffs, and not only for the playoffs, but they're also kind of shorthanded without Bledsoe, and they're also missing someone else, but I can't think of who it is. Whatever. Those are the guys Kyle Korver also had a monster game in the scrimmages, and with no Bledsoe, he may, another guy that they kind of have for the playoffs to be an outside threat. So Ilyasova, Korver, they're like punts I could get 5 to 10% of. Brook Lopez, I'll probably get about 20% of, and Giannis is like a 35 to 50% guy. Middleton, George Hill, DiVincenzo are like 15 or below. So Giannis, like the only thing I'm really gonna have a lot of. Then Brook Lopez, and then just some flyers on like Illy and George Hill and Kyle Korver.
Yeah, man, nothing too different. Giannis, one of my favorite studs on the slate. We'll get to Luka, but him and Luka are my two favorites. Giannis popped in there simply because of the fact that Bledsoe was out, and I assume he's going to have to step it up. Like you said, whenever one of these guys missed, the other guys usually step it up. So I do like Giannis a lot today. I like Middleton simply because I think the type of player he is really fits on some of Boston's biggest weakness. We see guys like Booker, guys that can shoot the ball, just destroy Boston. They do emphasize defense. They have guys that can play defense. Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they do Marcus Smart. They have guys that can do it. But one thing defense has a hard time stopping is shooting. If guys can shoot jump shots, it's kind of hard to get them to stop. I do think we're going to see some staggered time between. Okay, real quick. Wizards starting lineup. Wizards will start Napier, Troy Brown, Bogna, Hachimura, and Bryant. Nothing out of the ordinary there. But yeah, so I'm a little higher on Middleton today, and I think that it's a very competitive position between DeRozan, Middleton. We got Devin Booker at that position. We talked about No Oubre. We've got LeVert there, so I think it's competitive, and I don't think he's going to be too crazy popular. But FanDuel is really where you could take advantage of an inefficient price for a boost for Middleton. 7-1 on FanDuel at a shooting guard position. So Middleton and Giannis are the two guys for me. I'm not terribly interested. I just think we have better value elsewhere, but I'm certainly fine with taking shots on Illy. I do think that one of these guys, or maybe even two of these guys, are going to pop harder than we're expecting. anticipating or projecting. But Middleton and Giannis are my two favorite plays for Milwaukee by far. We'll move it on. We got about 12 minutes to lock and a few more games left, so we're going to pick up the pace. We got the Sacramento Kings visiting the San Antonio Spurs. We've got a 222.5 total, which is up from 216. The Spurs opened up -2.5. They are still at minus. I'm sorry, the Kings opened up -2.5, and they are still at -2.5. Talk to me about the Kings, Paulie.
Yeah, so these last two are the best games on the slate, in my opinion. The Kings have two of my favorite play on the entire slate, Bojan Bogdanovic. He just murdered in the scrimmage. He was murking right before the end of, when we went on hiatus. He'd finally, gotten his role back as like the sixth man and is likely going to start now. Sacramento is missing quite a few of their pieces, Alex Len and someone, I forget who. So Rayshawn Holmes just came back. He's projected to start. Harrison Barnes didn't really play in the scrimmages, expected to be on some sort of limitation. So De'Aaron Fox, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Buddy Hield, who's probably going to come off the bench now, are, going to have to carry the load. They are, in the playoff hunt technically, but I don't expect them to really, push to make it. I think they're just going to play out these games, get their guys experience, and call it a season after the 8 games are up. But they will be awesome for DFS and for fantasy value. We have Bojan is my favorite at his price for what he does. He's was lighting it up in the scrimmages, and I like that they right before the break had moved Buddy Hield to the bench. And, those two weren't on the court together, kind of taken away from each other. They may close, but they're going to have enough time on the court doing their thing on their own. De'Aaron Fox, same exact thing. He's just like 3,000 more, but another guy I'm interested in. He just has to do that much more to make the value that Bojan or Buddy Hield can do. Bielitsa, I think, is worth getting a share because there's no Marvin Bagley and no Alex Len. And then Kent Bazemore really impressed as well in the scrimmages, and a guy that if he's in the starting rotation, I would be much more interested in. As it stands now, he's nice, but there's just a lot of other pieces that we've already talked about, Troy Browns and Bogdanovic on his own team, that I'm just going to go to those guys first. But I'll have Bogdanovic or Buddy Hield or both on every team today. I think they're in such a good spot. I think San Antonio is going to be miserable defensively. They've got no size down low, and just one of my favorite games on the slate right now.
Yeah, man, I don't disagree at all. I think that the fact that the game starts a little bit later is going to lead to reduced ownership. Not that it would be popular anyway, but I do expect to see some lower ownership in this game. De'Aaron Fox is priced right around the same price as some of these other guys who you could quote unquote get boosts in their situation, which I think will lower his ownership. Point guards against San Antonio has been a thing for quite some time. No Bagley, so Bielitsa's minutes to be a little bit more solidified. No LMA either, so I think that bigs are really going to do even more of a number on San Antonio, who's really got Podol as the main big down there. Rayshawn Holmes is on FanDuel. Rayshawn Holmes, to me, 3,900 for Rayshawn Holmes, who is power forward. Just seems like, I don't know how you just don't play that 100%. I mean, listen, we never try to tell anyone to go 100% on anything. I don't see how you don't, on FanDuel specifically, at 3,900 on power forward. I don't say you don't just dump in on that, especially with Alex Len not expected to play either. You mentioned Bogdanovic, love him. Right, exactly. Love him on DraftKings. Bogdanovic. You could take some shots on Giles. A lot to like here from the Kings. I completely agree. And even if you look at the players we have projected minutes for, it's not a ton. Wanted to ask your thoughts on a guy like Jabari Parker. How do you think he fits into all of this?
I'm not even sure if he's definitely going to play, but
yeah,
I guess I would get like 5% of him
if he even gets
because they are thin. And if he does play and gets like 15 minutes, he can get you like a 20.
Right.
I just think there's much more reliable and higher upside plays throughout the slate. But if something comes out where they're going to play him 20 minutes or more, then sure, let's get some more of him. But I'm not even sure he's going to play today.
I'll let you, boy. All right, with that said, let's go to the other side, Paulie. Talk to me about the Spurs.
Yeah, so almost equally as interesting of a team. No LMA. Lonnie Walker is looking like he's gonna start at the 3. I've been waiting to unleash this kid. He's 3,200. In all the scrimmages, he played 24 minutes or more. Took a ton of shots. Contributed peripherally. Like, this is gonna be his breakout moment. Playing alongside DeJounte Murray, Derek White. Bryn Forbes is out, which is another boost for Lonnie Walker here. DeMar DeRozan, if they care and try to win, he should lead them in scoring. He's, kind of similar price to the guys we're talking about in that no man's land of Middleton and Devin Booker kind of world. But, if they do play out, if he plays like 35 minutes, he's going to do a lot and by far the best player on this team. So he's a guy that, I do have some interest in that range over some of those guys we discussed. And then Jakob Poeltl, there's no bigs. This team was small as it started. Now, without LMA, there's just no one for them to use right now. And Poeltl's one of the best value plays on the entire slate, along with Lonnie Walker. And, mid-tier wise, DeJounte Murray and Derek White, you kind of got to, pick and choose. I wouldn't play them together, but I wouldn't be surprised to see one of them, go over 6 or 7x value. DeMar DeRozan is just accurately priced, but similar to LeVert, could have like a 40-45% usage rate and be one of the better plays on the slate. I just don't know if Pop's gonna need to run him out there. Kind of I don't think that they want to win. I think this is about getting the young guys experience.
Yeah, I completely agree. Looking at Podol, we got value. Lonnie Walker, I will have a ton of Lonnie Walker today. We've been itching to play the guy as is. I don't see a better excuse. If he doesn't get the run during this little break thing, then maybe they just don't like him. This is like the perfect scenario with no Forbes, no LMA. They need him. So I got you, man. Talk about some cheap dudes, extremely cheap. We're gonna get up in there like swimwear. We got one more game left, so I'm gonna, I'm not gonna chime too much into it. We'll just go right on. We've got the Houston Rockets and the Dallas Mavericks.
The only game that's locking is the Orlando game, so it's
yeah, I know
it's locked, but it's not
it's locked, but it's not locked. I don't really have anything that different from what you said. I mean, I really don't, So yeah. Shit, fuck it like a bucket. What you got on Houston?
Houston. So, Harden was murdering in the scrimmages because Westbrook, didn't really get to practice. He caught the Rona. He's just getting back. His minutes were a little bit more limited. No Eric Gordon. So, we already know Houston plays tight rotations. They're going to play their starters a ton of minutes. I like a lot of Houston. Starting with Harden. Probably would not pair him much with Westbrook, but plan to have 50-60% of Harden and 15-20% of Westbrook. Like Danuel House, Robert Covington, PJ Tucker, and Jeff Green as the supplemental pieces right now. There's just nobody else, and you're going to get 30 minutes or more out of all those guys. And this is going to be a nice, fast-paced, up-and-down game with playoff implications, rivalry, interstate. It's a favorite game of the night. Going to have a lot of Harden because he just got all the value to do it. I think Westbrook is like a contrarian pivot off of Harden, and I think at the end of the season or before the break, we saw Westbrook kind of taking over from Harden, and I think we're going to see that flip-flop now because Westbrook's still recovering from the Rona. And I mean, it was clear it was Harden's team, and he had the ball, and he took way more shots in the first couple scrimmages. So I'm just going to kind of stick to that trend right now and get a lot more Harden than Westbrook.
Yeah, I completely agree with the Harden over Westbrook, especially with Westbrook catching the Rona, like you said, may not be in as great a shape or may have a little bit of rust, whatever. Either way, this is Harden's team. If you're going to pick one, it's 9 times out of 10 going to be Harden unless there's a particular reason or unless Westbrook just seems to be the hot hand. And that's partially what I think burned us a little bit during the regular season was that mentality. But I think that a lot of that was just variance and Harden just having some bad games. And I fully expect this to be Harden's team, and I expect him to be the main guy when he's playing well. So I'm going to stick with that trend. You mentioned no Eric Gordon. It was funny. They basically said, "Oh yeah, he's the he's going to start," and then 2 days later, "Oh wait, he's out." So we have some guys to mess around with, work him in. But here's the other thing with Harden. Aside from him being, while I agree that he'll be higher owned than Westbrook, I think he might be one of the lower owned studs in general. I think people will go to Luka. I think people will go to Giannis. So I wouldn't be surprised if Harden's ownership was lower than you'd expect, considering how good of a player he actually is. What about the Dallas side?
So the Dallas side, like, kind of similar to Houston, like, who's going to play. They are missing one or two of the guys that were getting some minutes. So Courtney Lee's out. Michael Kidd, Dorian Finney-Smith is a question mark. If he were to get ruled out, that could make some of their bench guys a little bit more interesting. But it's Luka and Kristaps. I like the idea of pairing them both. This should be a smash spot for Kristaps, with Houston having zero size. Double for sure. And he shot well in the scrimmages. He should get blocks here. Houston plays super fast. So does Dallas is kind of in the middle, but they'll certainly go with Houston. Luka likes to run. I like them both a lot. I prefer Harden over Luka, but I will have them both in teams, and I like Kristaps quite a bit. It's like easier to make a solid lineup with Kristaps and Harden, or Luka and Kristaps versus Luka and Harden. But you can certainly get them in too. In terms of anyone else, Seth Curry would probably be my next favorite Maverick. He's got the 3-point upside, especially on DraftKings, where like if he hits like 7 of 10 or more, he's going to smash. And he had a couple of those games. They were few and far between, but he was starting to do it like, one of every 6 or 7 games. He'd have like this game where you wish you had him. And then Maxi Kleber, just a big in a great matchup. If Porzingis gets hurt or if he gets in foul trouble, he's the only other big they got really behind him besides Boban. And that's essentially it. I feel like Tim Hardaway Jr. is a little too pricey and just not going to make the cut for me. And that's it. It's Luka, Kristaps, and maybe a tad of Kleber and Seth Curry.
I'm with you, man. We are officially at the first lock. So first game is locked in. Like Paulie said, we have late swap on both sites. For those of you who may not know, now you know. Part of this edge is going to be having the ability to kind of wait around, get news, and react to that news. In this situation, hopefully you guys reserve some slots, some pivots open for your later squads, because like me and Paulie had mentioned, like some of our favorite plays are from the later games, and I think that's going to result in lower ownership. I really do. So take advantage of whatever it is. I like Luka personally, just to touch on the game. I think Luka will be pretty popular. He is one of my favorite studs. Him and Giannis are my favorites, with Harden as a close third. But at the end of the day, it's him, Porzingis. If you're doing a game stack, I prefer just one generally, and that would be Luka today. I'm with you on Hardaway, a little too expensive. You got guys like Dorian Finney-Smith who you could work in. I think we just have better value, in my opinion, elsewhere that I feel a little more confident in. But I do like the studs in this game on both sides. Mainly Luka, mainly Harden. And that's going to do it, Nation. So make sure you hit the like button. We'll be back at it tomorrow. We got an MLB stream later tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll talk some baseball in between sweating some basketball. It's an exciting time to be playing DFS. Exciting time to be a part of the WiseTake Nation community. Go check us out at WiseTake.com. We got day passes available for NBA. Day passes available for MLB. Appreciate those of you who are hanging out with us. I know it's strange, right, to do an NBA show at this time, but this is what it is. This is what we're going to do. There's money to be made, and we're ready to make it. So hit that like button. Paulie, anything in closing before we get up out of here?
Just stay abreast to any possible change in situations. Like, someone random could get ruled out. Someone could pop positive for Corona and, change the slate up. And there's late swap, as you said, on both sides. So take advantage. Those guys that are going to continue working throughout the slate have such a bigger edge over the field.
Absolutely. For Paulie D, for myself, the entire WiseTake Nation, as always, good luck.
Yeah.